Hey, Millian here with you. Millian, your ministry provocateur, iconoclast, firebrand, and the resident heretic here at Dominion Fire, bringing you one of our pre-show editions that we do. And joining me today is someone I just recently met and learned of and excited to have on today from Together in the Harvest Ministries, the wife of the late Steve Hill, who you've heard of from things like the Brownsville Revival, the Pensacola Outpouring. Joining me today, Jeri Hill. Welcome. How are you, Jeri?
I am doing wonderful and so excited to be with you, and such an opportunity to get to know you and meet you too. You have quite a personality, and God uses you, and this is so awesome. I love it.
So what we normally do for our pre-shows, we just kind of hang out. We're just kind of talk. Let's talk about somebody. Who you want to talk about? We just kind of hang out. We take it easy. Nothing real fancy. We put out to the audience to put your comments in there and we'll answer some questions. I generally do the Ask Me Anything format. So if something comes up, we'll do that. And are you out in Central Florida? Is that what I heard?
Yes.
Where you're near? I used to live in Central Florida, which is, I'm curious, whereabouts are you?
Not far from, I'm in Kissimmee.
Kissimmee, yeah.
Yeah.
I used to live in Altamont Springs, right there in Central Florida, right there in Seminole County.
People need Jesus around here. Just in this area, I think it was last night, there was a house raid, and they arrested 16 people and confiscated something like 23 firearms. And so that tells me we got people around me that need Jesus.
Yeah, the house raid thing is usually when you see that, it's usually, a good indicator that something's up.
Yeah.
What's going on? Because I keep hearing all different stuff in the news and what's going on. What's the general climate like in Central Florida right about now?
Well, everything seems to be doing really good. Everybody wants everything to be opened up and be back to normal because, you think about it when they say, well, only essential things are open and things like that. But we're in stage 3 of opening up all businesses, and probably bars and things like that are not open because people get kind of crazy when they're under the influence of alcohol. And, they want their business to be open and running because every single business, every single job is essential to an individual to be able to make it, to be able to pay their bills, to be able to do anything. Their job is essential. And so I see as every job is essential.
Yeah, and I've heard a lot about with Florida. It keeps going back and forth. Like it was kind of getting under control, and then things are going back. It's like this roller coaster ride. It seems like you have going on out there. Is that the case? Like, are beaches closed too? Like what's going on out there?
Everything pretty much is open.
Okay.
And Disney is open. There's a lot of restrictions, because the main reason why there's restrictions that if somebody comes up with it, one of their employees, then they feel like they need to shut down. And so they're trying to keep everyone healthy and going according to the guidelines so that they don't have to shut down. And that's pretty much it, because Universal is open, Disney's open, but it's holding back. There's no people from other countries coming in. So not a lot of tourists coming from other places, but then there are some people coming in, but then they have a limited amount of people who they can allow to come in, and which makes it a lot, easier to get on a ride or whatever. But grocery stores, things are on the shelves. There's, things are going good. I don't know anybody here in the area who has gotten COVID. A few months ago, yes, I knew of some people, but nobody. I don't know of anybody who has died from it.
Okay. Yeah, I've heard that there's I've known people actually that have been in my house that told me like a couple of days later, oh yeah, I tested positive for COVID. I'm like, good, thank you for sharing that. And so we had to do the whole thing, but we tested and we're all negative, so it was nothing with us. But this is like the strangest thing I've ever seen in my life. And you were saying earlier about going back to normal. I don't think it's going back to normal. I think there's no new normal. It's like everything's got to officially crumble and start to rebuild from the foundation back up. Because I don't even know how you would go back to normal from this. This is nuts.
Yeah.
I mean, it's great that we've set up like technology like we have here and we're doing. I mean, this is a great kind of byproduct of this. I think it's wonderful, but just in terms of everybody, the average normal people of life, it's crazy.
I'm saying churches are open. People are going to services. And if they don't feel comfortable going, they stay home. But if they do feel comfortable, they go. I've seen where some churches, they say, well, it's okay to have some kind of a riot, not a riot, but a rally or a protest. And so some pastors are announcing, welcome to such and such church, and we are going to have a peaceful protest. And
Love it.
Since they have protests, why not have one at church? And so they're declaring it that way, and that's their way around it. But here, churches are open, churches are going.
If they would throw in breaking stuff, like if they put up some things we could actually hit with hammers or something, I'd be all there. I'd be there. I'd be all over it. It'd be wonderful. I just think it's how we should do it. Yeah. Before we roll on, we're getting some people jumping on here. Listeners, here's what I need you to do for me, please. To get around the algorithms and the little banning thing they do on Facebook, there's a couple quick steps I need you to take. In the comment section, if you would just type your name, your city, just leave a comment of any kind. Don't you say hello, tell Jeri how awesome she is, because we're just scratching the surface. Leave me a comment of any kind. Once the comment is there, hit the like button on your own comment. Yes, your own comment. Hit it on your own. Then like this video. That's number 2. Third is share this and tag one person and put it on your feed. Do those 3 things for me, and this thing will start blowing right up. That's how you get around some of their little tricky algorithms that they have. It's why people don't get the reach that they would like when they put out posts on Facebook, because they're controlling everything, but we break it up. That's what we do. Looks like Ronald's joining us. Dave Aaron is joining us. I know that guy. He's all right.
It was okay. Through him that I met you.
Correct. Yeah, we didn't really get a chance to talk too much, so that was unfortunate, but I think you kind of got the general demeanor of what I'm like. So you're in for it today. What else is going on in your world? What are you doing right about now?
Well, I was in church on Sunday and went to, David Ravenhill is Leonard Ravenhill's son. Okay. And I've known the Ravenhill since, this 1977. Okay. Met Leonard Ravenhill for the first time and stirred such a hunger in Steve and myself. We were both at Bible school, and he was one of our teachers. And David Ravenhill, his son, came to the Brownsville Revival and was one of the teachers at the Brownsville Revival School of Ministry. And so went and listened to him preach on Sunday morning. And at church, there was only one person there with a mask on. Okay. And had a great time of worship. It was wonderful to see them, and their heart is for the presence of God. And so anytime I can go to services, or if I can go and speak, which I'll be speaking in that church in a couple of weeks, but I have a school of ministry and a school of evangelism online. And we love to see people become comfortable in sharing their faith with others.
Okay.
So that's one aspect of Together in the Harvest.
Okay. So an evangelism school. Now, what do you teach specifically if someone comes to your classes? What would they come out learning?
Okay. There's 16 to 20 classes in there. Some of them are Steve preaching, some are me. And it's sharing different aspects of evangelism, and even being, taught how to do your own track of your own testimony, having something to hand out to somebody. And so that they can get in touch with you, to get them involved in church, letting them know that somebody cares enough about them to give information to them like that. And I have on there a former Muslim who is from Iran, and he married a woman from Seattle. And she went over to Iran, and they got married, moved to California and went to the university in California. And he got saved. He found a Bible and he started reading the Bible and he got so saved. And he opened up a satellite television program, moved to Dallas and met him there, and was on his program and was being aired into Iran through the language of Farsi. Mm-hmm. So I had a little speaker in my ear, and whatever he was saying in Farsi was being translated into my ear, so I knew what he was saying. Then he'd ask me a question, and I would answer it in English, and he would translate it for the people in Farsi. Mm-hmm. And has such a tremendous burden for people. And I had him on as one of our teachers, and it was how to reach Muslims and share Jesus with them. And how better.
Hold on, I got to jump in for a second. Okay, yeah. So we'll come back to the rest of the story. What was his number one thing that he would say to reach Muslims? Because this has been a very interesting topic. I've been seeing a lot of this. What's his, from an insider view? What's number one?
Number one is love.
Okay.
And it was so crazy because right after we filmed him, I go up to North Dakota, and I'm speaking up in North Dakota, and there was a man who was a Muslim, a taxi driver who picked us up. And the whole way to the hotel, 20 minutes, he is telling me the law. And I'm telling him about the love of God and the love of Jesus and sharing just love. And he keeps going back to the law. Mm. So when we get to the hotel, we're outside in the car. This is North Dakota in January. It's freezing, Bismarck, North Dakota. And he helps me get the luggage and everything out. And we're standing outside for 20 more minutes. And he wants to talk about the law. And I remember what Dr. Hermos told me. He said, keep going back to the love of God, him sending his son Jesus because he loved the world. He loved everybody in the world. That was the number one thing. So I kept going back to the love. And this man even followed me into the hotel lobby. He wanted to continue talking. And that love it has no comparison. It's like a scale. You put the law on one side and love on the other. Love is going to outweigh the law. Although you need the law, you embrace the law, but you have to share love with them. And you can't be afraid, because Dr. Homos was saying, stay away from fear. Talk to them straight to their eyes. Let the love of Christ shine through from your life, and you will win them. Okay. Well, I didn't have a whole lot of time with him, but he was intrigued enough to want to continue talking. Okay. And he was hanging out there in the lobby with us, so much so that the woman thought he was with us. Awesome. But it just stirred up inside of me, listening to Dr. Homos and him telling how to reach somebody, with the love of Christ. And then I have on there how to reach those in the gay community, and how to reach, and it's all across the board. How do you reach anybody, whatever they're involved in, whatever sin that is going on in their life, you have to base it off of love. And I think in every single one of the lessons, 16 to 20 different lessons, I have somebody, Dr. Brown is on there, how to reach the Jewish people. And, so it's basically
we're reaching everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. And, sometimes we are so afraid to talk to people, but if we've been spending time with Jesus, and then we have the love of Christ coming from us, then it shouldn't hold us back.
Awesome. All right. So before I interrupted you, so you were saying, so he got saved, he started teaching and all that. And then where'd we go from there?
But he has his own satellite program.
Yes.
In Farsi, so it goes into all the Farsi speaking countries. And then I have a ministry where I'm mentoring over 150 ladies. I do a Zoom call every Tuesday with them and prepare something. And it's talking about, well, that we entitled it Beam because we need a beam relationship with God, and life is a balancing beam, but we also need beams to build our temple, this temple. And they need to be strong in order for us to be able to handle whatever comes our way, because things do come our way. And you go through death, we go through financial difficulties, we go through desert experiences. And so I talk about all those things. And each week, it seems like God just magnifies something that I'm going through that I get to share with them. And I love that he's teaching me so I can share with them. And then I also have a ministry called Ryan's Hope.
Okay.
And I lost my son the same year that I lost my husband.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And so I want to see other people have a chance at life. And so we've opened up a home, men that don't have a place to go to, to start over. And it's a safe place. It's a place where they're learning and studying the Word of God together. But they can live there and get a job, save for a car, save for furniture in their first apartment or their apartment. We're helping them get on their feet, but also getting them actively involved in a church. And so that is all very, very much what we do. And then I travel and minister. It's been shut down a lot during this time. With COVID and everything, but things are opening up and starting afresh and anew. So really excited about that. But even if I don't get to speak in a church, there's hurting people in churches.
Oh, yeah.
I am out ministering to people out on the streets. I love being out on the streets. I love talking to somebody who does not know Jesus. And if I can throw them a lifeline, then that's my heart's desire, is to throw them that lifeline and let them know that we help people get off the streets. But then there's also dentists who need Jesus. There's doctors that need Jesus. And so I love every opportunity that I get to share. And somehow in every place I go, there's an opportunity to share Jesus. It just kind of maneuvers that way, and I love it.
Listeners out there, just make sure, leave a comment when you get a chance, leave your city, leave your everything, but also let's throw some questions for Jeri about anything, or me, and ask me anything, if you will. She told me she's an open book, so anything you'd like to know. But in addition to all the other ministry stuff, if you know some of your history of the Christian faith, you've heard of various revivals, and one of them being the Brownsville Revival, sometimes known as the Pensacola Outpouring or the Father's Day Outpouring. I've heard it called a couple different names. And around that time, well, she was there. You were part of this whole thing. So you have some questions about that, and let's get this thing going. And Jeri, let me ask you a question now. I got to ask you a real serious question. If I were out your way, if we were in Central Florida, this is huge. Where would we get something to eat? Because I'm very hungry right now.
Oh goodness, you could get food anywhere.
Good Cuban food in the area, because I haven't had that in ages.
Sure. Yes. You can go to Disney Springs. They've got some Cuban restaurants there.
Disney Springs.
Yeah.
So your Disney is open, like Disney out here on the West Coast, where their thing that's locked down. Everything's locked down. Oh yeah, it's terrible.
Oh, Disney Springs has been open for a few months. I think 2 months. It opened before Disney opened.
Okay.
And then Universal opened after Disney Springs. And it was like a trial and error, seeing how it was going to go. And then Disney opened up. But they are limiting how many people can go. So you have to register before you can get there.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Not at Universal. Universal, the doors are open. Anybody can go. They're not limiting anything. But Disney, they are.
Yeah, because I'm thinking like Cuban rice and beans. You have a bunch of ocean out there. I'm thinking seafood of some kind. I don't know. I mean, I'm in a desert. I get McDonald's. So I'm like, I'm in the mood for something different out that way. So I need a lobster. You get lobster out there?
I would probably invite you to my house. I like to eat at home more than anything.
You know, I've been really enjoying, I got to tell you, and I mentioned this on the last broadcast I did. I'm very much like a super introverted home kind of guy. The grocery delivery, the Grubhub, the food delivery. This is like a magical wonderland for me. I am loving this. My son had his birthday yesterday. He just turned 10. So we threw a big birthday bash a couple days ago. And then the next day, which was yesterday, we ordered from a local Italian chain. It's called Buca di Beppo, if you've ever heard of that, which is phenomenal. And we just had piles and pans of food, and it was we picked it up curbside, brought it home, and just had some family and friends over. It was magical. It was wonderful. So I got to tell you, there's certain elements of the lockdown I'm not necessarily hating. I just got to say, just throwing that out at you.
Yeah. And, it's hard for me to believe that you're an introvert.
Very much. It's yeah, I've done vlog videos on it. I've done I'm very much an introvert.
Humor makes it seem like you're not. And, God uses every single one of us and brings us out of our shell, right? I remember in school, I was totally an introvert and never wanted to get up and do a report in front of the teacher or anything like that. But the day I met Jesus, something changed. It was no longer me being, thinking of myself. And all of a sudden I met the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, and I couldn't help but talk about him. And that's what I see in you. So an introvert who is funny and going out there, you portray it in a way, you just bring things alive. You've got a great personality, and that's what God uses. He takes every single one of us the way we are, and he can use us. He needs all this variety. He's a God of variety. And when the Brownsville Revival took place, I think he did it on Father's Day because he's the Father. And it was all about him. That day started all about him. There was nobody else that he wanted to be exalted but him. And so when that took place, when people talk about revivals and things like that, you start lifting up the name of Jesus, and people will come, people will be touched, people will be changed. And that's what he wants to do with every single one of us, whether we're an introvert or an extrovert, whether we're intellectual and we know all the Bible, or maybe we don't know hardly any of it. He wants to take every single one of us and use us in our personality. And, so many times we think, well, I can't do what that person does, so I won't do anything. And boy, the enemy wants us, wants to hold us back. He doesn't want us to be out there, but every single one of our voices are so important.
Absolutely. And I try to explain this to people about the whole introvert thing, because people have said to me, Millian, are you ever going to start a church and pastor a church? And I'm like, no, I'm not. Because I'm not the guy, shaking hands. Hi, welcome to church. It's great to that is not me. I'm not that people person. I'm just going to be very blunt with you. I'm very good one-on-one. Like this is my wheelhouse right here, just talking to an individual person. And then, the audience kind of just eavesdropping in and just little interaction. I like that kind of stuff. But, being out there, and like one time we were in Ecuador on a mission trip, and I somehow managed to stumble into a church and I started ministering healing. I had like a couple hundred Ecuadorian, and they're all like this tall. They're like 4 feet tall. They're amazing people. And I just had like them all coming at me, and I'm like, okay, I don't know if I'm built for this. I was like, I'm going to teach you how to minister healing, and I want you to, and I started like deputizing everybody and got them going like, I'll be over here in the corner if you need me. Just do your thing. So it's
good. Passing it on to somebody else.
It's really just a product of my laziness, but it works. You know what I mean? It's like this way, like when we do this kind of stuff, I don't have to like have a church and go, do the shake hands thing, but we can reach thousands of people through the internet and the podcasts and all that. So I found a way around it. And, I just, in my mind, I see God kind of rolling his eyes at me because he's like, yes, it counts. Just like,
Absolutely. But
gotcha.
I know a lot of evangelists who are very introverted or just like to be by themselves.
Oh, I
They
love
get
it.
out there and they evangelize. And my son-in-law, he has All for Jesus Ministries, and he loves to get out there and preach up a storm. He's related to Nathan Morris. I don't know if you know Nathan Morris. My son-in-law is Jordan Morris.
Okay.
And he's going this weekend to preach up in Delaware, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And so doors are opening up, and that's a great thing. And so, but when it comes time to be done preaching, he likes to be, you got to get replenished by
When the
yourself.
switch is off, the switch is off.
Yes.
No, I get, and I think, okay.
My husband was like that too. He could get out there and do all these things and do everything he's supposed to do. But when he'd come home, it was like, oh, I can chill. I don't have to perform. I don't have to do anything. I can relax. And he was a lot like you. He was funny.
My wife, it took her a long time to figure it out, but I told her, she's like, every time that we go somewhere or there's people, you go like disappear into the bedroom and like by yourself. It's like, do you not want to be around? I was like, no, you don't understand. And I think it's a product of like discernment, because when I go somewhere, I pick up on everything. I pick up on everybody's stuff, and it's like, it like pulls the life right out of me. And, I'm nice, I talk and as best I can, but I'll tell you, when I come back, Lynn's like, need your introvert time? I'm like, I'll be back there if you need me. YouTube, Wi-Fi, and a Coke Zero. I am in hog heaven, and that's all I need. It's a funny thing, because in ministry you think, oh, I got to be out there, I got to be shaking people's hands and doing this and preaching. It's like, I'll just record it, put it out there, and you watch it at your leisure. And Jeri Hill's awesome. You listen to her, she's good. And audience, if you're listening out there, seriously, Jeri's awesome. Drop a love Jeri in there, and we'll post the comments on the screen. Dave Aaron, he's a wonderful guy.
Comment there, but I don't know how to comment to it.
Just speak it out. What do you got? Do you remember when Steve preached holding an MIA POW flag on Cornerstone Television in the 90s? So tell me about that.
Yes. He always had a prop or something. And so when he was talking about people who were lost that were MIA, he would, have that prop there, that they were lost away from God. They're hiding from him. And so he would do anything. But before the Brownsville Revival, he hardly ever used any kind of a prop.
Okay.
And he started using props mostly during the Brownsville Revival. We'd go antiquing, looking for things.
Nice.
And so my house is full of, my kids say, your house is full of old stuff, Mom. And it is.
Nice.
And a lot of it's those props and messages that he did. And behind me, the crown over here. Oh, it's on the other side here. Everything's.
I did that too. I'm like, hey, there's.
But below that, see the drawers. I gotta move here. See the drawers there? Those are full of Steve's messages, and I've got two just like that.
Wow.
And
those are the archives.
Yes.
Gotcha.
And we've made them available on our website, because some people like to take those and make it their own. They'll use, his notes and things, but then they can throw in their own thoughts, bringing it more into 2020. And so we have like over 200 messages on there. We haven't typed them all up and scanned them all in there right now. But they are powerful messages, really, really amazing. And I hear people all the time, they write me all the time saying that they're listening to his messages. Their lives have been changed. I just found him on YouTube, and I've been listening to his messages. I got saved. And then I found out he's not even here anymore. They didn't even know. And so it's really awesome to see that people are still getting saved even when they listen to the messages.
It's interesting too, because before we started this round of doing podcasts and scheduling and all that, it had been about 2 years since I did the Heal the Sick podcast, about 1.5 years since we did this one, the 360 podcast. And I would have people messaging me all the time going, oh, I keep listening to them. I binge listen to them over and over. I've heard each one 100 times. And I'm like, really? Okay. And I thought to myself, okay, here's the thing. I always say I am like the worst minister ever. I'm just not good at this, right? But the thing is that I said, God, look, I was praying one day. I was like, listen, God, here's the deal. I said, I don't need anything fancy. Like, I'll clean the toilets in heaven. I'm cool with that. No problem. I said, I just want to be in. I just want to be in on the roster. That's all I'm asking. And it's like, they say that there's going to come the day where you kind of do an account of everything. And I'm like, he's like, well, what'd you do here? I was like, yeah, that was a bad idea, man. Or how about this? Yeah, I screwed that one up. But see that podcast I did? There's like thousands of people check that out. And they said they listened to it for years and it's like still going on. It's like that legacy of stuff. I'm like, so I need to get at least partial credit. That's all I'm asking for. So I fully get it.
Absolutely. And your message resonates with people because so many people, if we compare ourselves to somebody who's out there doing huge meetings and things like that, then we think what we're doing is not important. Mm-hmm. And so that message resonates with people. If I compared myself to Steve, and God showed me the things that I was doing were important as well. And mm-hmm. So, we're supposed to be on fire for God. We're supposed to be, I have this thought, when it talks about hiding your light under a bushel, mm-hmm. depending on what translation that you're listening to, reading, or whatever, you think about a light or a flame, and you put it, back in the day, it was always a candle or some kind of a flame. It wasn't a light bulb like today. It was a flame. And so we have to have that spark. We get saved, we have a spark, but it's like that match. You light that match and it can go out. So you have to ignite something else. And that's why, I don't know that I've ever heard anybody say this before, but if we put our light under the bushel, then our bushel should catch on fire. And we have a bigger flame over our lives, over what we're doing. There's this big, huge flame that our bushel caught on fire, because we can have that spark, that small little flame, and we are hiding it. We're hiding it away because we're ashamed. We are introverted. We don't want to talk to anybody about it. We don't want anybody to pressure us on things. We don't want, so we hide away. But as we're hiding away, I'm hoping that we're spending time with Jesus and that bushel catches on fire. And so that's what he wants to do. He wants our flame to turn into something bigger. And we have to be throwing wood on the fire, and that's spending time in the Word of God and spending time in prayer in order to put more logs on our fire. And, I throw in there, going to church and having fellowship with people. Those are, down there on the list. The main part on having our flame get bigger is we spend time with him. We get the heartbeat of God. And we're spending time in his word, and we find out what he wants from us. And you read these different prophets in the Bible and how on fire they were. Daniel, he would open the window to pray so that people could see him praying. And he prayed for his city. And if we are doing that, and we're praying for our cities, and we're praying for our pastors, and we're praying for the disciples, everybody that seems they don't feel really called to go into ministry, but they're called to live for Jesus. Mm-hmm. And we should be set on fire and, having, much more to offer to people when we spend time with him, and that spark will spread to somebody else. And at the Brownsville Revival, when, people were coming in and getting touched by God, but then they were going out. They went back to their cities. And I get messages and letters from people who got on fire for God, and they're still on fire for God. But I also get messages from people who fell away. How do I come back? I got disillusioned. I got hurt by this person. I got hurt by this other person. And it's like a bucket of water, ice water being dumped on you, and that fire and that flame being, washed out. Because not everybody felt, had the same viewpoint of what was happening in a revival. And ultimately, it was lives were changed. People got on fire for God, and people went out and shared it with somebody else. And when I see of all the different people that I get messages from that are in the ministry today, and those that, continued on in their church as lay people, and it's just as important teaching somebody in Sunday school how to fall in love with Jesus, how to live for Jesus. And God doesn't look, when you look up there and you're in the airplane and you're looking down on the ground and you see how they have different crops going this way, that way, another way, but it's all pretty much level. And I think that's how God looks down, and he sees what we're doing, that if we are faithful in what we do, he looks more at our faithfulness than what we're doing. If we're putting our heart into it because we love sharing Jesus with others. And, whatever way we do it, like on this here, what we're doing here, we're sharing with people, and I'm seeing the messages that pop up. They don't always stay up long enough for me. I can't seem to do
Sorry about that.
Read something and
We're going back for you.
Be able to speak at the same time. So you got to talk so I can read.
All right, I'll talk for a minute. All right, so listeners, here's the deal. So today, this is the pre-show for the podcast. We're doing the Dominion Fire 360 podcast, which is sort of the all-around one. And Jeri will be our guest, and we're going to get into it more about the Brownsville Revival. And Lisa mentioned here that they were there at 6 a.m. I heard all the stories where huge lines and weeks at a time and all these people involved, and it's crazy. So we'll get into that when we do the podcast. But when Dave Aaron and I were talking a little bit, because, excuse me, I had asked about his experience, and we were just talking about you coming up on the show as well. We were talking about you. So so I said to him, I said, whenever I have heard about revivals, quote unquote revivals that you've heard, like, Toronto and the Pensacola and Azusa Street, you've heard all these things. It's always such a wide spectrum of opinions that you get on it. It seems like something, and in my experience, as I've sort of studied the history and observed things, it strikes me that whenever there's a revival, God is sort of reintroducing a big concept back into the body that sort of got away from people. Like you've seen revivals where, we baptize now. Or you see Azusa Street. Wait, there's a Holy Spirit? Wait, what's that all about? And you see this. So when it comes to revival, since you have a unique perspective on this, why are people so fighting against this so heartily? Why are people so opposed to this kind of stuff?
Well, I was there every single night for 5 years.
So you were opposed to it after a while? Like, all right, enough, enough.
No, I did not want to leave.
Okay.
When we, towards the end, we went to 2 different countries in '99, or Steve went to Austria. And then he and I went to Japan. But during that 5-year period, he got all these invites to go to other countries. And they were saying, please come to us. We cannot all go to Pensacola. Mm-hmm. And he started, after going to those 2 countries, he felt like the Lord was telling him it was time to go back to the nations and, share this all over the world. And so I loved it. So when we left Argentina, we left Brownsville, we went to Dallas to be at an international airport. But to answer your question first, why the wide spectrum? A lot of it was people who had a real negative thought towards it were people who never came.
Okay.
And you really cannot have a true, awesome idea of something unless you've been there and experienced it. Okay. And when you see people running to the altar and they've been living in sin, but still, acting like they're Christians and doing things. They know how to do it, but they had things that they were dealing with on the inside. And God was, honestly, he was dealing with people's hidden sins. And so there were blatant sins, people that were upfront, I'm a sinner, and then there were other people that had been living for God and doing what was right, but still had sin inside, things that they were doing privately that God was dealing with. And so I can't compare every single move of God to another move of God, things that were taking place in different places, but I can attest to what was going on at Brownsville.
Okay.
And we were dead to ourselves. We had been crucified with Christ. Nevertheless, we were alive, and we wanted it, and we wanted everybody to have it. We were so surprised that it happened in the United States, because prior to Brownsville, we had been on the mission field, and we were accustomed to being in services every single night, doing things every single night. And so we loved that. And we loved going to different countries and seeing it happen all the time. But for Steve, for somebody to cut this down, and I know what my husband had to go through to prepare a message every single day. He did not have a reservoir of messages. And I have this laptop sitting on, like I pointed out to you, the messages that are in that file cabinet right here. And there's another file cabinet right here in front of me. So I thought I just would pull one out. And 7 Keys to Victory. Here would be, and this one was one typed, one written, but there's every single one of them has a sleeve for every single message that he prepared. And if anybody thought for 1 minute that this was easy, it was dying to yourself. Every single day, dying to yourself to get a message for that night. I can't even get these to be, because every single one is in a sleeve. Sermons from the last summit. And I can pull out, they'll probably all fall, but you see how thick these are.
Yeah.
And he had to do this every single day, get a new message for that night. And so somebody who critiques it and somebody who looks down on it, or they don't believe it was God, I'm telling you, for a man to get up every single day and prepare a message and go into the office and spend time in that office to prepare a message for that night. And he used to say he had 5 messages that he used to travel with, because when you, as a missionary, you're traveling to different churches all the time. And when you're starting a church, you're mostly sharing about what God did in your life, more testimonies and things like that. But when I look at these, it blows my mind, because I knew what he went through to make this happen. Yeah. And then to go out and look for a prop, and he'd have his staff going out looking for props. And, was it planned? Not at all.
Not much, no.
No. And I had a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old and a 3-week-old when the revival broke out. And so I got my kids ready to go to church every single night at 5:00. And it took us an hour to drive there, because that first year, we didn't have our own place there. So we moved 9 times in the first year, because we didn't know how long this was going to go.
Wow.
And so we were in a hotel for a week, 2 months in another hotel, the Residence Inn. Then we were in rented a house from a lady for 2 months, rented a house from another couple for a few months. And then we go back home. We don't know if it's going to continue on after Christmas. And he said, well, I'll just go back and see. And then he said, honey, it's going strong. Come back over. So 9 times we moved that first year. And
Wow.
my 3-month-old, I never had a chance to prepare a nursery for her. Moving from place to place to place to place. And some people, they can plan their nursery, and our lives, we were dead to ourselves. We knew the purpose that God had for us, and it was to be obedient to him. And he gave us the strength to do that every day. And there were times like when my newborn, when she was about a year old, she came down with the chicken pox. And so I couldn't take her to church. I'm telling you, I was chomping at the bit to be there. Why? There was a presence of God that was there, and I didn't want to miss out. I wanted to be there every single night. And whatever God wanted, that's what I wanted. And I encouraged my husband the whole way through. Sometimes he'd get in the car at midnight and we're driving home. We have an hour to drive home. And he goes, did it make any sense? Did I make any sense at all tonight? I said, are you kidding me? Did you see those people running to the altar? But I'm telling you, Millian, it was God. God was on the move, and it was not anything that we had mustered up. You walked into that building and the anticipation, you knew it was God that was happening. And it wasn't for them to hear Steve, although his messages impacted people, but they were running to God and to Jesus Christ and Holy Spirit, and people were being set free from hurts and the bitternesses that were going on inside people's lives. There were, molestations, people that were healed from molestation, and it was deep work that God was doing in people's lives. And so anybody who cuts it down in any way, shape, or form, they did not experience God there, and they did not go. Most of the people who had anything negative to say did not go. And because how could anybody cut down somebody going to the altar and getting right with God and being set on fire and going to Bible school and wanting to sell out to God themselves? Who can argue with that? And was there anything? I never saw anything weird happen. And I was there every night. People were set free from demonic things. To me, that's not weird.
Oh, yeah. I get you.
The Bible speaks of it. And so people being set free, that's what it was. It was all about. And so I can't say that about every single revival that was going on. I can just say it about the one that I was involved in and seeing all that was happening. And in 99, less people were coming. People go, well, why did it end? Well, less people were coming, and Steve felt called to go to the nations again. And we go to Dallas. And while we're in Dallas, we're looking for a church. Honestly, I wanted to stay and have Steve fly out from Pensacola, and our kids could stay at the church there. But he felt like we needed to be at an international airport because he was going to be flying a lot. And so we had to find a place, and we couldn't find anything at all like what was happening at Brownsville. And one day I was complaining to God. I'm making this story really short. And my kids, we put them in school. During the revival, I homeschooled them, and then we went to church every night. Okay. But here we are in Dallas, and we visited a few churches, and I was complaining to God, and I said, I feel like we had left the river and we were in the desert. And God spoke to me and he said, "What? I am the river in the desert." And in other words, he was telling me that I'm supposed to be refreshed in him and not go to a church to get refreshed, but go refreshed and go giving rather than expecting anything. And so we didn't find anything that was at any way, shape, or form like Brownsville. And they continued on for about 3 more years every Friday night. And Steve would periodically go in on Friday nights. But looking at these messages and everything that he put into it, it was heart, soul, and strength.
It's amazing. I find that very, very fascinating because people say, well, why did it end? But let's take it back to the beginning here. Jesus' ministry was what, 3.5 years, and then he wrapped it up. It seems like with any of these moves and revivals, everything in life runs a course. There's like a circle of things that has to run through, and then we have to move on to the new things. Otherwise everything gets stale. It's just the way life is. So I find that fascinating, but
I don't feel like it stopped.
Okay.
Because it has continued on through the people who were set on fire. They continue it on. I've talked with people that are missionaries that are in the Philippines, and they're passing it on to the people in the Philippines.
Just changes form, that's all.
Yes, and that's what fire is supposed to do. It's supposed to spread.
It's funny that you bring that up, because that was going to be my next question, because we're going to tease the audience a little bit, because I got to kick everybody out soon, because we're going to do our official podcast recording. Before we do, Rose says, "You're the wife of Steve Hill. I used to watch this move of God from Luxembourg via God TV and loved his preaching." So Rose is in the audience checking you out. Luxembourg. Cool. And quick follow-up here. He was so bold and loved the holiness. Yeah. So before we boot everyone out here, I just had a question for you. Let's tease a little bit. You wanted to talk about fire today. Give me like a sentence or two about what you want to get into.
Well, mostly it was how fire spreads, but it also it purifies and it consumes.
Okay.
And so those are along the lines of fire. It's not something that it should ever go out in anybody's life.
Okay. I like it. All right, I'm excited. We're gonna do have a great podcast when we get that thing going. And so, last chance, audience, if you have any questions, anything you want to know, is we're gonna wrap up soon. And Jeri, what is the websites for everything?
Togetherintheharvest.com. Mm-hmm. We have multiple websites, but on there you can get to everything. Anything and everything on there for togetherintheharvest.com.
Awesome. And so as we're closing up here with kind of everything going on in the world, we were chatting early on about everything. What is it you want to see happen right now? I mean, clearly you want to reach people and do all that, but if you were to use the fire, let's burn it down to its elements here. What is the main thing you need to see for this time and era that we're living in? What do you want?
Oh, goodness. For every disciple to be ignited, because we get so wrapped up in the things that we're going through, and we have to set those things aside when it comes to talking to somebody else. You might be able to throw it in saying we can relate, but the things we're going through should not dictate our enthusiasm for Christ and his that enthusiasm. Nothing should take precedence. And so putting everything into perspective, that it's all about him, and we should die to everything else, because so often we're going after things and we're not going after him.
A lot of stuff gets in our way, huh?
Yes.
That kind of happens. All right. So viewers out there, again, Jeri Hill, awesome so far. It's going to get even better. Together in the Harvest is the name of the ministry and the website. Wife of the late Steve Hill, Brownsville Revival, Pensacola Outpouring, as you have been hearing, as well as Ryan's Hope. I got there. Moved 9 times. Let me tell you something. I get out of breath just recording a podcast, and I was getting tired listening to everything that you did every night. I'm out of breath just from that. I have no clue how you accomplished any of that. I'm lazy, but listeners, make sure you visit dominionfire.com. That's the website where everything's going to happen. This podcast will be posted. I'm going to try to get to it later today, so hopefully we'll get it right up here. And if you're joining us late, you can watch this on the rebroadcast, which I'll post on the YouTube channel, as well as Dominion Fire, as well as on the Facebook feed, so you can check that all out at your leisure if you missed anything. And yeah, that's about it. So, Jeri, any final thoughts for the audience? Final goodbye you'd like to say to everyone?
I am praying for every single one of you, Father, that you ignite us and make us more like you, and burn up all the dross, everything that is not supposed to be there. Burn it up, get rid of it, so that we can be pure and holy before him and let him use us. Amen.
Amen. All right, listeners, we're cutting out. Jeri, hang with me. I'll be right there with you in a second. Listeners, okay. dominionfire.com is the website. Make sure you check us out, and I will see you guys on the next one. Who's coming up? I don't know yet. We'll figure it out later. See you soon.